Kick this thing off then. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Kottkamp. I'm the Chief Marketing Technologist. Hopefully that's maybe a new title for you for a customer experience agency, Tazoo. Our session this morning is native advertising. Digital advertising industry gets serious about better advertising. So we're going to want to explore what serious means, and we're going to want to explore what better means. And maybe we'll explore some other strange things too. I want to introduce the panel real quick. I have, and then I'm going to turn it over. I'm just going to introduce who they are and then let them, everybody introduce themselves. We have Benjamin Chen, the President of Consumer Products Group of Sonovation. James DiGiulio, President and Co-founder, Chief Product Officer of Tongle. Aaron Levitz, SVP of Wattpad. Tim Waddell, Director of Product Marketing and Advertising Solutions for Adobe. Debbie Meenan, Head of Video Business Development for Federated Media. And Mitchell at the end, the CEO of June Group. So, Benjamin, maybe I'll start things out and let you kind of give your minute or two overview of actually who you are and why you're here and what you care about and maybe even what your company does.
Thanks, John. Hi, I'm Benjamin Chen. I'm the president of consumer products for a security company called Sonovation. We're doing some cool stuff that you'll hear about with fingerprints and things that help you log into websites later. But more importantly for this panel, prior to that, over the last, I'd say 13 years, I've run a number of different companies in the content space. Most importantly, I ran a company called Mochilla. Mochilla was the world's leader in syndicating content and combining that with brands and putting that online. We basically syndicated articles, photos, and video from every wire service in the world, as well as we had a team that created original content. And we did that for brands like British Petroleum, Toyota, Cadillac, etc. And also, I was one of the key people that helped start a company called Vigil, which is in the social media television space. And I have a great appreciation there, again, for content and brands.
Thank you.
I'm James DiGiulio. I'm the founder of a company called Tongle. If you don't know us, it really is like a studio on demand. We've got a technology platform that connects mostly advertisers, but movie studios and nonprofits as well, to a network of 50,000 writers and directors in every kind of corner of the globe. And they create everything from TV commercials to specific small pieces of content for YouTube. Recently, we created a feature-length documentary and are doing a bunch of really interesting things. I'd say I'm here probably because I've created more ads in the last year than any of the holding companies through our network for, McDonald's, P&G, Lego, Budweiser, whomever, all trying to find a solution to this advertising problem where you can't just make an expensive film for TV anymore and expect the world's going to follow. So probably have a unique perspective.
Hey everyone, my name's Aaron Levitz. I work for a company called Wattpad. I'll do the show of hands. Has anyone heard of a Wattpad before? This is getting better every year. So Wattpad is actually the world's largest network of storytellers and readers. We're a social network for writers and readers who are coming to tell anywhere from original fiction, fan fiction, nonfiction, to the extent that we have about 35 million monthly active users coming, about 9 billion minutes spent per month. And to put that in perspective, about every minute of every day, 24 hours of reading goes up on Wattpad. Surrounding that is beautiful images, amazing video trailers. If you go on YouTube and search Wattpad, our fandoms are making hundreds of thousands of videos about the stories that are being written. And why I'm here today is about 6 months ago, we launched our native advertising platform, which is bringing brands in very selective methods to our community to be able to tell amazing stories, whether it's around themes that are important to them, causes that are important to them, but really finding ways to engage with our 35 million users.
Cool. Hey everybody, Tim Waddell. I work for Adobe. I'm assuming you know that.
Just to interrupt for just, can everybody hear us all the way to the back?
No.
All right? No. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So Tim Waddell, work for Adobe. I'm assuming you know us for the creative side of the business for applications and things like that, Photoshop. But Adobe also has a very large business on the digital marketing side, which is analytics, site optimization, and advertising optimization, which is what I work on. And I've been in the ad business for wow, far too long. Started in digital around 97. So, but I've seen the agency side, the sales side, the product side. So interested in this topic just because it's kind of a, advertising is about being unique experiences with engagement, but also trying to drive scale. So that's kind of our point of view.
Hi, I'm Debbie Menon. I work at Federated Media. My job is to really head up the video business development at the company, work with all of our salespeople to create branded entertainment content. And Federated Media, if you're not familiar with it, is somewhat of a conglomerate of websites where we have bloggers, authors, and people that post content. And it's all a content marketing company. But the company was just bought out by Lynn Media this year. And that company was just bought out by General Media. By the end of the year, we'll be the second largest television station group in the country as well.
Hello, Mitchell Reichut. I am CEO of a company called June Group. Name of our company, JUN, means truth, and I founded it out of my house many moons ago with this idea that advertising should be transparent and tangible, and that clients, when they spent money on it, should actually know what they got. So we do two things. We get millions of people to see branded video. Typically, it's a little longer, 60 seconds to 3 minutes long. And we also drive traffic to websites. Our clients are a number of Fortune 500 brands. We have offices in New York, Chicago, and a few people out here on the West Coast as well. Yeah, it's going.
Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you. Once again, our session is on native advertising. The session will be about 75 minutes long, which gives us enough time to be able to not only kind of zig and zag a little bit around some discussions, but also to make sure that it's a very interactive session. So we've come up with a set of kind of thought starter questions that will work with the panel. But what we want to do is really be able to, if we could go off of that and get a good, healthy discussion going, as well as we would like. One of the advantages of having a relatively small audience rather than a giant hall is we've got the right number that you people can be participatory in the things as well. Yeah.
Debbie, this is a question for you right from the very beginning.
Don't be shy. Step right up.
Oh, no.
We've known each other for a while. We saw each other many years ago at NAPI, and we were back when you were with Parade. Based on the fact that, to me, this group, there should be standing room only, because there's only 3 ways that you can actually make money in our industry. It's, by ticket, by advertising, or by subscription. I don't know why there isn't a packed room here. What do you think the reason is that more people who are in this digital space don't understand the value of what advertising is about?
Wow, that's a great question. Should we tie it back to native advertising?
We'll start out with
Do you want to
kind of
moderate the panel?
But
John, sorry, you lost your spot.
yeah.
I said I felt like this panel looks more like a congressional hearing.
I
Really
yeah,
just
that
started
was-
off the right way. At that
Yeah.
comment.
So it starts out from them asking us. But sure, I think that's in fact, although actually, could I hold that for a moment, and then that we could come back, because I'd like to kind of, that's a very good question to kind of think about within the context of our specific topic about native advertising. How does that fit into the larger question? So Debbie, that gives you a couple minutes to be able to think of that brilliant, erudite answer.
It's Monday morning. That's why it's not packed.
Okay. And I just wanted to take a second to give my more full introduction as well. Again, my name is John Kottkamp. As I said, my company is Tazoo, and since everybody else has kind of done, okay, how many of you ever heard of Tazoo? That's what I kind of thought of. We're based in Washington, D.C., and Richmond, Virginia, London, and I'm out of our Seattle office. I'm a little bit the odd man in this group because we're a customer experience agency. We're focused on working with Fortune 500 companies to kind of look at what that end-to-end customer experience is and to help them deliver relevant contextual content to drive those experiences. But that kind of starts at the beginning of the funnel around the advertising and goes all the way through to the end of the kind of retention and loyalty, turning customers into brand advocates, where they're then contributing their own content. So it's kind of, there's branded content on one side, there's customer-generated branded content on the other side. When we look at it, and I think one of the themes that I wanted to kind of talk to, which I think addresses your question just a little bit, is in this whole notion of advertising. And again, I'm looking at it more from this customer experience standpoint, is we like to drive forward what we call the fair exchange, which is basically, it is up to us as, brands to be able to deliver and satisfy what the customers are, what consumers are looking for, whether that's information, entertainment, shopping, research. They're engaging with the brand for some set of purposes. And it's up to us to engage that with them. And in exchange, if we do our job well and engage with them, then we can ask them to do things like buy things, engage with it. It's at a very simple level. In a B2B world, it may be as simple as register with something. It may be a like in the social world. So what we're talking about today really is that beginning of that journey, which is how to engage people. We've all heard all the statistics about, a gazillion images that everybody sees every day, and we're all had nationally ADHD, and everything is kind of blotting out. But we want to kind of focus on one particular area of how to capture that attention, and that's around the idea of native advertising. So just to begin with, I thought we discussed in the panel before we had a conversation of asking, what does everybody think native advertising is? Because it's one of those buzzwords that has a lot of hype. So we started out with, we thought we'd start and go to that, that oracle of perfection and absolute truth. We Googled Wikipedia. So this is what Wikipedia, what they call native advertising. They said it's an online advertising method in which advertiser attempts to gain attention by providing content in the context of the user's experience. Native ad formats match both the form and function of the user experience in which they are placed. The advertiser's intent is to make the paid advertising feel less intrusive and thus increase the likelihood of users that they will click on it. The word native is used to refer to the formatting of the advertising materials to make them appear more consistent with other media in the recipient's universe. Okay, so that's a Wikipedia, and I think we kind of generally said, yeah, that feels reasonable. But I wanted to share one other thing, because there was another piece that came up recently that if any of you saw recently, John Oliver and his HBO show, last night, this week, took on native advertising. And it's an 11-minute segment, and it is absolutely beautiful. I would refer, if you haven't seen it, I would refer all of you to go see it. I obviously, for this purposes, did not go to 11 minutes, but tried to just kind of simplify it. Oh, sorry.
Print publications have struggled to attract advertisers, partly because traditional banner ads are so ineffective that one study found we only intentionally click on them less than 0.2% of the time. Native advertising before. You have probably been subjected to it by now. It's when a piece of ostensibly normal content is stamped with tiny disclaimers like this and this, and then contains messages that are often clear endorsements. And if you'll excuse me, I'll just take a break from making this point by enjoying the refreshing taste of Mountain Dew Code Red. And then it's at this point that you usually realize, oh, this isn't the thing that I was looking for. You're just advertising the most disgusting drink ever manufactured. In which case, I'd like to make a suggestion. If our news is going to be corrupted, we should at least get something in return. Every time a corporation sneaks advertising into our news and ruins it, our news should be allowed to sneak into their advertising.
When you get hot, you get thirsty. And when you get thirsty, there's only one choice. Diet Coke.
The recent Ebola outbreak has killed over 700 people in West Africa. The World Health Organization says they don't yet have it under control, and the situation threatens to become catastrophic.
So that's John Oliver's take on native advertising. So I guess I would ask the the panel what they think, and really, do you agree or disagree that it is this blood-sucking force that's going to, destroy journalism and editorial purity, or is it the latest nirvana of advertising in the way to kind of create great customer experiences? Mitchell, why don't we start down at that end and start with you first?
Yeah, I'm not so concerned about it being a global force in our lives. I think it's been around for a long time. We're chatting before. Some people have called it advertorials. Essentially, the way I would define it, it's advertising that's meant to blend in with the content, and therefore supposedly be more attractive. I think that over time you're going to see native advertising be just part of the display advertising landscape. I think it will be commoditized. I think it will not be such a big deal this time next year, but I do think there's value in it. I don't think that it is the main force corrupting news. There are plenty of other things doing that, although publishers, I think what Mr. Oliver is referring to are struggling, I think, business-wise to earn a decent living on the internet, and that's sort of a larger problem. But I think that a lot of our clients like it because it's more prominent. It's situated in a place where it's visible, and it's in environments that make them comfortable. When we say to a client, you're going to have a native ad on this series of publishers, it makes them feel like they're getting some value out of that, and we tell them exactly where it's going to run and so forth.
Yep. Yeah, why don't we just work for this question? We'll work our way down across here.
Just for some context, I used to work at Variety a long time ago, and that whole editorial advertising state of the union was a big deal. And as we kind of pursued the landscape has changed so many years later, I was at Parade and we used to start selling these advertorials, and advertorials were just simple brands trying to create context that looks like advertising. And if you think about the way the online world has worked and all the display advertising, the homepage takeovers and the ads on the rail, you're inundated with these ads that are now, it's almost too much. And so the question is, how do consumers consume this type of content now? And are they viewing those display ads? And yes, the answer is they still are. But I think brands and marketers are trying to have their ads look more organic in an environment that is more contextual, that it feels more literally native in an environment in the ad unit. So I think as far as describing what is native, the question is, it's really not a question, but it's still not exactly defined. The IAB has an industry standard with it, which we can talk about in a little bit. But, for right now, just think about it as an advertiser that is trying to create an environment that is natural and organic to their brand in an editorial well or along those lines.
So when you were at Parade, did the advertorials, did the purchasers of those, did they feel like it was delivering more value than a traditional ad? Or
that's a good question. The answer is yes and no. You can't measure magazines like you can, the digital online version. The question is, now today, can we do click-through rates? Can we see, what kind of views the video may be getting? And I think it's more measurable now than it is back then. But I think the advertiser liked the concept back then because it was a new way of advertising.
Yeah. It's funny because I think about the magazine space. I'll look through a travel magazine, and it'll be like every editorial features on Tuscany in South Africa, and they'll be like what's this piece on Nebraska? And it's like in a special advertising section. I'm always like, all right, well, I feel like it's disgenuine. I don't really care anymore.
But that's why they have to disclose it. Special advertising section, advertorial, or even they need to disclose it now online as well.
The couple examples, if you guys, I think it's the New Yorker did the thing for Netflix, and it was an article basically about the women's prison system. And it was obviously sponsoring Orange is the New Black. And I think people view that as a very effective native piece of advertising. It didn't really talk about Netflix much, but it talked about a topic that was, part of the community's issue, and they happened to be the sponsor for our show. And then there's the opposite end, which was the Church of Scientology, who in the Atlantic. So wrong audience, wrong everything, and it was like, oh my God, they pulled it down like really shortly after it went up because it was just a terrible, terrible idea. But the idea of tracking as well is like, how do you track the value of what Netflix got out of that thing? I mean, yeah, there's clicks and there's readerships and all that, but I think this idea of brand is still important, where it's this association with a valuable, article or topic or whatever. So native's interesting. To Mitchell's point, we've been trying to do this forever, right? Back in the 50s, and television sponsored, the news and whatnot. So there will always be this need and desire for this cool, interesting, impactful, relevant piece of content that's happens to be sponsored. And then there's the rest of it, which is just mass scalable reach advertising, which will have both. So
yeah. So interesting enough, the orange is the new black thing in the New York Times.
Yeah,
they did that one. They actually got a lot of flack for that because, well, it was actually a really interesting article. Netflix wasn't brought up front in it, and so even interesting articles aren't enough to make it good. It still has to be called out in the right way. I live in a fun universe where I'm not purporting to be factual at all. My network exists because people want to read and write fiction. So when brands come to us and want to tell stories, I mean, we have our own writers, our own influencers who have hundreds of thousands of followers. We bring those brands to those influencers to write stories that are thematically attached to what they like. Or you'd be surprised how many brand teams write these massive brand briefs around why they chose this color of swimwear this year, but have no way to tell that story and have only told it internally. So it's just a new way for an outlet, but because it's fiction, we don't necessarily run into the same issues that Mr. Oliver got to talk about there. But the other side of native advertising, I mean, coming from a platform, is that you buy it from me. We're not getting into programmatic. We're not letting other people buy placement on our platform, and therefore there's a premium to it. So from someone running a platform, we know the ways, we have the data on what's going on in our network. We know the best ways to reach people. We know what they're reading, what they love, what genres are hot. I can tell you vampires are more powerful than werewolves this week. Last week, I ain't joking, Edward won. If I got the right one, I'm not good with Twilight. But that kind of data is powerful, and you don't get that by going programmatic. You have to come to me. So that's a whole other side of native that often gets missed in that is you don't buy New York Times front page from anyone except someone, either New York Times or someone has a really good deal with the New York Times. Like, we charge more for it.
Look, I think, when I think about native advertising, it's in the content well, right? And we're now migrating from the concept of display or advertising in general. And I think the bar for being in the content well is high. My expectation as a consumer of content is at a place where it can't just be advertising. It has to have value. It has to be relevant. This places a huge burden on the brand, because when they actually try to move into the content well, they can damage their brand quickly if they're actually not meeting the expectation of the consumer of the content. And I recognize more people would be able to enter the room if the doors were open back there. But, I think that, one of the big issues is if you look at the statistics on any kind of advertorial or any kind of notion that a brand has associated themselves with content, generally are pretty good, right? Generally, you'll get orders of magnitude delta. Orders of magnitude delta in terms of engagement. Redefine that. 10 times better, right? Performance. The problem is you can't scale that, because all of a sudden you've taken something that you want to sell to mass market America or to from a very large segment, and now you're trying to figure out how you're going to create something relevant for that segment. And that's very hard to do. And it's very hard to do that in scale. And I think, the bar now for native advertising is so high. Like, I'm expecting that whatever video that I see in that content well, if it's native, it better be something that's going to be viral. And I'm part of the reason I'm consuming that content is because I'm also there as one of the first people to actually look at it and be part of that social phenomenon for that content. So I don't think about native advertising as much as I think about it as content. And it puts a burden on brands to be in the content business.
That's because they can't get out of the way.
Well, it's hard.
Well, they can. I work with, as I said, I work with just about every major advertiser, and they all want an edge. But then they want something different. They want something that's content, and then they take once that happens, they don't want it anymore, right? And then because there's so many stakeholders, they don't really know how to do this.
And then try to do that with pharmaceutical,
yeah,
right? I mean, it just gets harder and harder.
You know, it's funny. Like I was talking to a pharmaceutical company we were working with. We proposed the idea that they do a partnership with Lionel Richie, because Lionel Richie just, I guess, re-released his greatest hits, and with the song "All Night Long." For one of their special products that everyone happens to know. They weren't buying it, but it would have been viral.
But scalability is an interesting issue, right? How many front pages of the New York Times are there? How many promoted stories can I do? There's other ways for brands to get into the content well, as you said. And one of the really powerful ways that we're finding is through curation, not creation. So don't guess what's going to be hot. Look, I can go get some of our biggest native stars. They're going to write stories, and every campaign we've done, the advertising is turned off and the virality is taken over. We've been really lucky because we have phenomenal people in our network. But the fact of the matter is, if you are a big pharma and you want to do stories about All Night Long, guess what? There's probably 50 million on my site. 50 million is an exaggeration, probably closer to 5 to 10 million that you can curate and say, this is my voice, brought to you by. And there's simple association that it's patronage more than anything, that you're bringing forward this great content. Because in my network, 24 hours of reading goes up every minute of every day. Brands coming as curators and picking some of the best stuff and taking the time to go through and find some of the best stuff, which a lot can be done through data now. We don't have to guess what the best stuff is, we know. That's a really powerful way that is very scalable for brands, opposed to always creating.
See, I would challenge that from the standpoint of, my experience has been when I go to a brand, I'm either talking to two people. I've got the agency that basically is routing most of the digital buy to the 26-year-old media buyers, and no offense